everyone, this is Amanda from devotioninaction.com, and welcome to day 6 of Continuing in Peace. You'll notice I have a pretty complicated entry on the back side of this page, and I am kind of tilting this printable so that this feather fits really nicely on this page. I have already traced it in pencil, but it may not be exactly like the printable because of that really kind of busy entry on the back side of this page. It makes it very difficult for these really fine parts of this feather. We are in Proverbs chapter 15, verse 1, which says, "A gentle answer turns away anger, but a harsh word stirs up wrath." You know, we talk about being peacemakers and peacemakers rather than peacekeepers. Peace is often made in the way we respond. Gentleness disarms, even in a storm. Wind in a storm can be very powerful. It can destroy large buildings and uproot trees and even kill. However, a feather, lightweight and gentle, will be lifted and swirled, but not destroyed in a storm. How we respond during the storms of life will affect whether we are lifted or torn apart. Now, speaking of that storm, our tongues can stir up the storm and can make it even worse. I mean, our verse from today, "A gentle answer turns away anger, but a harsh word will stir up wrath." However, our tongues can also be agents of God's healing and peace. The tongue that heals is a tree of life, but a devious tongue breaks the spirit. That's Proverbs 15:4. The storm is the hardest time to keep a calm mind that is prone to respond gently and peacefully. When tempers are rising and tension is tight, it's difficult to stop the cycle into a stormy relationship. This is the moment to practice keeping our tempers in check and speaking peace into the situation. Proverbs 15:18, this whole chapter is great. "A hot-tempered person stirs up conflict, but one slow to anger calms strife." Let me give you an example. I'll even give you one from my own life. True confessions time here. I remember a few years ago getting into an argument with my husband. I don't even remember now what originally started this particular spat. However, in the middle of my frustration and mounting anger, my husband lowered the tone of his voice and said, "I'm sorry." And he apologized for not trying to see my side. He said he wanted to be able to talk about this and not just argue about it. It completely diffused the situation. Since then, I've used this technique many times, seeking to bring peace to a brewing storm. You know, when my husband employed this awesome tip from the Bible, it was not completely his idea. We had been doing a study on marriage in our church. It was a small group study by Emerson Eggerichs called Love and Respect. It's great. I highly recommend it. But in one of the sessions, Eggerichs states that in an argument, the more mature person apologizes first. Well, this idea scratches a competitive itch in my husband and me. So we both want to be the most mature. This competition is actually really helpful. It causes us to slow down arguments and apologize freely. And now today, be the first one to disarm mounting tension and apologize. Even if the apology is just for how we originally reacted, let's be a gentle feather in the storm, lifted above and protected from the tempest. Now this watercolor, I've left a lot of time to actually talk about the watercoloring in this one and kind of moved quickly through the devotional, and we might come back to some devotional points, and I definitely want to pray with you before we leave today. But this is a little bit trickier of a watercolor situation. So we've had some easier, I guess, watercolor experiences so far, but this one has some very small, like feather pieces, and I would encourage you to choose maybe 3 colors. 3 colors that are going to be your colors for this feather. And one of my colors is green. So I'm starting with my green and coming in and doing like just a little bit to start off these feathers, working fairly quickly to put down some green where the feathers would attach to that center spine along there. And I'm being very careful as I do that to leave that white, to leave that spine white, because I want that to be white, and I want the place where the feathers are connecting to be green for the most part. Now I'm going to add in kind of this brown that has some golden and a little bit of red in it. And I'm going for kind of more realistic feather colors, but you could do some really fun colors here. You could use like teal and purple. You could use, I mean, I don't know, whatever your favorite colors are. You could use whatever colors you want for this feather. And I would choose 2 to 3 colors and just kind of repeat them. So start one close into the spine of the feather, and then do one maybe in the midsection of the feather, and then one going all the way out to the tip. I'm going to use just these 2 colors because I wanted to work fast enough that that green was going to still flow out into the brown. Now, we've talked about this before, how wet, when you're using watercolors, the watercolor that's wet will flow out into wherever the water is. So that includes water that has color in it, like what I'm doing right now, where when I go to do the rest of these little feather tendrils, I'm doing it before the green dries so that they blend really well against one another. Now I'm using just the tip of a pretty fine brush to create a little bit of dimensionality on that inner spine, and then just taking some clear water and blending that out just a little bit, so it kind of made it kind of like white to cream color, and just slightly darker on the bottom edge of it to add dimensionality, but hardly any difference at all. You could do that with a gray or something like that as well. And my background to really make that center spine pop and to make those feather tendrils pop, I'm going to do in kind of like dark blues, dark purples. This also feels pretty stormy to me, having kind of those dark blues, dark purples. I have some pretty bright lights shining down as I am watercoloring this just for the video purposes. So this looked darker in person than it does on video because the light is really illuminating it. But these are pretty, I'm mixing up some pretty dark blues, dark purples to create that stormy effect. And then just be careful. You might want to work from the outside of the page in. You want to be careful around those feather tendrils that they're pretty dry, so that you don't end up with just a muddy mess of everything and you can still see everything when you go in. And I would, if it was me, and I did on this, use less water, more pigment when you go to do in between those little feathers to put your background color in there, and drag outward. So start at the center, drag out toward the outside, and then blend that into the darkening sky around it. I kind of like this because it feels like the feather is kind of swirling in the storm, and it's that dark purple, dark blue, and like the feather is just rising above it. It's being blown up, rising above the storm, and kind of unaffected by the chaos and the tempest that is brewing around it. And I like that idea that this picture illustrates for us. So as I finish putting in this background, I want to pray with you. Dear God, give us gentle words in the middle of a storm. In the middle of a mounting tempest in our relationships, help us to find your peace so that we can extend it to someone else. Remind us to disarm anger and bring healing with our tongues. In Jesus' name, amen. And I don't know about you, I just find I like this one. I think it's relaxing when you have kind of repetitive watercolor task going on. You don't have to think about it so much. You're doing kind of the same thing to all of these feathers, individual feathers on the big feather. I don't know what's that called? There's a word for it, like each individual piece, but I cannot remember it at the moment. Oh well. And this background is kind of the same movements, same thought behind it. So you don't have to put a lot of thought into it, but it is fun to watch it kind of come together as you paint. And it's not super difficult. It's just a little bit more, I don't know. It takes a little bit more care than the last couple of entries that we have done in this challenge. But don't let it scare you away. If you're new to watercoloring, you can do this. I promise. It is okay. Just kind of be mindful of those things that we've talked about, and you can create this feather in a storm kind of look on your page. Now you can tell I've got a lot of water on my page, and I'm in my Dayspring Illustrating Bible. So I will let you know that I did prep this page with a thin layer of matte gel medium, just because this is a lot of water, and I feel like I can move that water around on the page a lot easier when I have that thin layer of matte gel medium on there. And so I did prep this page just a very thin layer of matte gel medium, which is basically like clear acrylic paint if you've never used it before. You could also use gesso. Clear gesso works to prep a page, but I feel like you get a slicker page from matte gel medium rather than gesso. Is kind of grabby. It grabs a little bit more. It's still good. I like creating on top of it, but my preference is matte gel medium. So you find your own preference about what you like as far as like prepping, not prepping. You don't have to prep your page. I just prefer to. So here we have our feather in a storm, and I kind of like the colors that this ended up being. It pops more in person than on camera, I think, but it did turn out really cool. So I'm just adding at Devo in Action, my handle on Facebook and Instagram. Continuing in peace, this is day 6. Soft responses, calm conflict, right? This feather in a storm idea that when we're gentle, we can kind of lift up and float above the conflict and calm it down. Like kind of settle it down. I must have said that a lot when my kids were little, because they grew up saying, settle down, settle down. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you are enjoying this series. I'll see you in day 7.